You're listening to Tonebender's Sound Design Podcast, presented by Sound Ideas. This is the show where we talk with the sonic artists behind our favorite films, games, and series. This Black Friday, Sound Ideas is offering its biggest savings of the year. Enjoy 50% off all proprietary sound libraries and memberships. Sound Ideas' best deal yet on world-class audio collections. But that's just the beginning. Each week, Sound Ideas will spotlight one of their most popular libraries with an exclusive limited-time discount. Visit sound-ideas.com regularly to discover which library is featured and grab these weekly specials before they're gone. Hello and welcome to Tonebenders. My name is Tim Muirhead and I'm excited to talk today about the hyper-engaging documentary, Viktor. It might be tricky for listeners to find this doc, but I promise you, it is worth searching out. This is a film about a deaf photographer living in the Ukraine when Russia invades, and his decision to document the war despite the dangers of putting himself in the battlefield. As interesting as that plot is on its own, for sound enthusiasts, this film is even more interesting, as large swaths of the soundtrack go into the POV of our main character, so the audience hears the action as though they are listening through extremely compromised hearing and assistive technology of a deaf person. This technique makes the viewer hyper-aligned with our main character, Viktor. The sound team that was tasked with making this all work sonically are some of my favorite guests on the show from the past. First up, we have sound designer Peter Albrechtsen joining us today from Copenhagen. It's great to have you back, Peter.
Hi, Tim. Nice to be back.
Peter, this is actually your 7th time on Tonebenders.
Whoa.
Way too much.
Amazing.
Joining Peter is his fellow sound designer on this film, but also a Foley artist credited as well, is Heikki Kossi, joining us from Finland today. It's great to have you back on, Heikki.
Great to be back. Thank you for inviting.
And finally, we have Tim Nielsen on the line. Tim was the re-recording mixer on Viktor and is joining us from California. Tim, this is your 6th time on Tonebenders. It's great to have you back.
Well, I have only one goal in life now, which is to be on Tonebenders more than Peter Albrechtsen.
The impossible job.
We can make that happen.
Exactly.
Peter will be blackballed after this episode.
We'll invade Denmark just to prevent this from happening again. It's nice to be here. Nice to see everybody.
Listeners, please stay tuned after this talk for a chat with Viktor's director, Olivier Sarbil, that will run on this episode just following this. So first up, let's talk about the decisions of when to make this sound in POV and when to make it not in POV, because the POV is very striking of when you're hearing through his listening device. It becomes very distorted, very digital. I would love to just talk about how, A, you came up with that sound and how you decided when to use it and when not to. Maybe Peter, do you want to start with that?
It was actually a conversation we had from the very beginning, because doing this whole thing like through the sonic POV, I mean, it would be pretty much unbearable. So, but at the same time, it was incredibly important to kind of really get this feeling of being with Viktor all the time. We didn't have a perfect plan from the beginning. It was something that kept on developing all the way from our early talks with Olivier, which were happening while he was shooting, and all the way through to the final mix with Tim at Skywalker Ranch. It was like this conversation, like how much should we be inside of the head of Viktor? There was definitely several places where it really made sense to do that. And then there were places where we were like, should we be non-POV or should we be like kind of half subjective, half objective? We played around with a lot of different balances in this film. And I think that's a very big part of the sound design and the mix in this film is experimental. We were experimenting all the time. And we had a director, Olivier, who was really open for experiments and really wanted to create a very kind of enveloping experience where you felt how it was to be deaf, but also in a way where the audience feels pulled in and not pushed away.
It's interesting because some scenes are very loud that are going through this technique, and some scenes are really quiet. There's a scene with Viktor just standing in a shower, and you just hear like the water in this very distorted way, and it's very subtle. And then there's other times like a helicopter scene where it's super loud and super grating almost. Heikki, you're one of the world's great Foley artists, but on this film you're credited as a sound designer, so obviously you're doing something a little different maybe.
Yeah, of course we did basic Foley, couple of days walking, and I used a little bit the things we learned with Nicola and when we were working with Sound of Metal, but it's almost impossible ever to trying to copy something from the previous project. It was more like maybe the benefit from Sound of Metal, it was more like an experience of about people or about person who don't hear properly. Because Viktor, he's not totally deaf, he's about half more deaf than person who hears well. Then, of course, there was the sounds I was using contact mics or stethoscope mics, trying to create the sound which Viktor hears inside his body, where he hears and feels resonance of different things around him, and maybe resonance of war and touching maybe window, and he feels what's going on in the city, but he doesn't hear it yet. So those were basically the tricks, and like Peter said, that it was kind of process to trying to find the places where we go inside his head and how much we go inside his head, because sometimes it makes sense perfectly that we are totally with him inside his head and his experience, but sometimes it's more like a blending a little bit natural world and the sound what he feels. I'm talking about more that what he feels, not hears. There wasn't that much experimentation during editing process about when we go with him and when we are in some kind of realistic world. So that's maybe the big reason why we needed to experience things even during the final mix.
And just maybe add that two things, which one, none of us know what Viktor can hear. It's impossible for us to know this. So all we can do is try to convey what our impression of it is. And so in some scenes, what we imagine he's feeling or potentially hearing with his assisted devices can be almost calming to grating and really harsh and different things. So it's a sliding scale, right? The whole length of the movie, and every scene was an approach was like, how much are we causing irritation to the viewer if we keep pushing this? We had a whole palette of sounds that everybody on the crew had made, and some of them were just really harsh, horrid distortion, and that was used in times when we needed it, and other times were some of the stethoscope things that Heikki did, and those were used at various times. So it's not a single subjective point of view, but it is always a subjective point of view whenever we use it, is that we don't know. And every scene in the final mix, we had all of these sort of pieces available to us, so we could kind of shape every scene depending on what the narrative needed and what the emotion needed. The window scene is one of my favorites, and we worked on that one quite a bit to get that one what we wanted. And I remember even I had a few pieces from my library that we ended up kind of shaping it on the stage. And that's the nice thing. Heikki and Peter were both there along with Olivier and the composer, and so we were all in the same room, and we could really shape these things to get them exactly as we wanted. And it was just refinement pass after refinement pass, and some of the scenes were very hard and took a long time to get, but it was always in service of the movie. Like, when are we going into Viktor's, I won't say in Viktor's head because it's not in his head, but every scene was kind of its own little project in a way.
Yeah, and I would like to add also a couple of scenes, like in the canteen with other soldiers. I think we've all felt that he tries to hear, he wants to hear what they're talking about. He wants to be part of that group of soldiers, but he's not able to do that. So he's isolated, and that's also with kind of directs his feelings where he's going. I think we managed to do quite nice differentiation of those different scenes.
We recorded so many different elements, and I feel sometimes when you have a scene in a feature film with someone being deaf then or losing the hearing, then you have an EQ removing everything that's high frequency and you just hear the low end. And what we did in this film, which I felt was quite different, was that a lot of these things were done organically with recordings by Heikki or by Nicola, like things that were recorded in special ways. So it was more like an organic approach to subjective sound. And then we had all this palette of sounds for the mix, which was amazing.
And also, because we're talking about this, we spent a lot of time on Viktor's voice itself, because of course he has a very distinctive voice, partly because of his deafness and partly just because he's got a fascinating voice. And we were trying to figure out, what do we do with this to sort of kind of put you half inside how he might hear himself if he hears it. People have commented on this to me who saw the movie. They were like, what did you do to his voice? It was so kind of interesting. And it wasn't anything massive, but we did spread him across the entire front wall of the cinema, on the left, the center, and the right all at the same time. And that had this kind of effect of almost making it out of phase, but or just like sort of roomy in a sort of strange way. And it has an interesting presence when he's narrating, particularly because he narrates lots of the film.
Yeah, the narration is actually something that comes from how he talks when he's doing sign language. As far as I've understood from Olivier, this is his way of talking when he's not trying to make everyone else hear what he's saying in a way. So that it's very much his inner voice in that sense. And it totally made sense to kind of go that way with the voiceover. It has that kind of whispery quality. It's not a big narration. Now I will tell you what is happening. It's more like an inner voice and a whispered voice, and it makes it very powerful, I think.
I think the listeners will hear this later with the interview with Olivier, but the narration was written by Viktor. It was his diary of what was going on. And the way that it's recorded, whispering isn't almost the right word because it's all like throat, not instead of of a whisper. It's a very arresting narration, especially as a viewer that doesn't understand what he's saying. I have to read it. So it kind of washes over you in this way that voice doesn't normally work. It's very interesting.
But I think to Viktor, that is his whisper.
Well, yes.
In other words,
yes.
He thinks he's whispering, and that's just because of his deafness. That's kind of the quality of his voice that comes out. It is this interesting thing where it's in between a whisper and a shout at the same time almost, and it's a very strange sort of affectation for listeners to hear, but it's very moving, I find, because there's a lot of emotion that comes through for me in that voice.
Yeah, and from the Foley perspective, it was also what he was talking and how he was talking. With this special kind of feeling is that these scenes with the sword, it was kind of thing that because I needed to do some decisions when doing Foley, when I'm more like a realistic or when I'm super close, and that kind of felt that okay, I need to do sword sounds so we can feel his sweat, that he's sweating same time.
The whole soundtrack is really interesting because when I watched it in the theater at the Toronto International Film Festival, the director was there, Viktor was there. I actually got to meet Viktor briefly. It was kind of this amazing experience and it all washes over you. And then when I watched it again later, I realized that sometimes there's a scene where he's in a car being driven and the voices of the other people in the car are being treated, but the sound of the car, the ambience is not being treated. So you guys were really messing with the viewer, the listener in this situation, in ways that went completely unnoticed the first time I watched it through. So it felt really natural. And then when you watch it through the second time, you're like, oh, wait a second, they're manipulating me here. Obviously, I'm not deaf. It wouldn't have felt natural to a deaf person, but it was really well done, is I guess what I'm trying to get at. Congratulations on sucking me in like that.
Thanks. And we did have to make that conscious decision constantly of if we just affected everything, even in the POV scenes, the HOV scenes, hearing scenes, whatever you want to call them, as Peter sort of said, it wouldn't work, right, for the whole length of the film. You have to ground the viewer in reality as well. And it is a movie about the war in Ukraine. And so you want people to experience those parts of it for themselves as well. Not everything has to be funneled through Viktor's sort of hearing. We did that a lot. We split a lot of things. And it was like, the important thing in that car scene is that Viktor can't understand what they're saying. We get glimpses of it, but the car is kind of inconsequential whether Viktor hears the car or not. So we would play with the elements that we wanted to make difficult for him to hear, because that's what's important, is that he doesn't hear them or doesn't understand them. But the car, to try to futz that's just going to get confusing for people.
It's also really about creating this physical experience, like a thing that a lot of deaf people is saying is that instead of them hearing the sound, they feel the sound through the body. And that's also where this whole thing about Heikki's use of stethoscope microphones for Foley and so on all came from. But it also really influenced the way of doing ambiences and doing these background elements and kind of making everything as though it went in through the body of him, like really making it not an out-of-body experience, but an into the body experience, so to say.
Well, and this is a war movie, right? So we have guns and explosions going on all over us, and these are very much things that he could feel. And that the window scene and other scenes when he's at the gun training and all of these things where we kind of going in and out of perspective. If you've ever shot a real gun and tried to record a real gun, you know that 80% of the experience of shooting a gun is to feel that concussive wave hit your body. And the recording of a gun usually sounds very underwhelming because it can't portray that physicality of that reality. So that was a really interesting thing to figure out is, a lot of the war sounds, how do we work with those in ways that we get both worlds as well.
Yeah, they are also this kind of using sounds. Something is more muffled, something is more realistic. I think those moments are also kind of triggers for the scene, for the image, for the story, and also for people to make them listen more carefully what's really going on. Thinking about, for example, playing a song, if every player is doing the same turnaround, it's boring. So this is one way to kind of tell the story more organic way.
Tim, can we talk about when you got all the sounds and put them up on the faders? Obviously, everybody had treated these scenes already. Did you feel like you had freedom to take it further, to pull it back?
Peter and I have collaborated now on a few documentaries together and a couple other projects, and so we work together a lot. So we know that we tend to bring out the best in each other, and that Peter will come with the project, and then he trusts me to push it in ways that I want to or want to try. We work very experimentally, so I never feel sort of constrained by anything that's delivered to me. We are collaborative. It's not like I take it over and go, okay, here's what I want to do. But I think one of my main jobs always is to take all of this material and ask, what if? There's a lot of what ifs. What if we tried this? What if we just took all the music out here? Or what if we took all the other sound out here? And I think from the other side of it, when I'm working on a project that I'm not going to mix, what I really appreciate about a really good effects mixer is that they're doing that. They're questioning what my decisions that have been made up to that point. Because a lot of times I'm set in my ways because I've lived with it for maybe a year, or in this case, I think probably, they lived with it for a long time. And they'd gone through even a couple of temp mixes, I think. So, they had a conception of what the film was. My main job, I think, is to take all of that and go, well, that's great. Here's where we are. But what else can we do? And those ideas come from everybody during the final mix, from the director, from Heikki, from Peter, not just me. So I always feel like the final mix is kind of the third stage of a film, and it's a completely open book at that point. And we have all this material, and some things we kind of know how they're working and how they're going to shape. In all the films I've done with Peter, I would say, and I think you'd agree, that there are some scenes that are drastically different in the end than they came to us at. I mean, like 180 full on, completely different. And we hope for the better, in hindsight, you never know, but that's the goal. And so Peter will do that too. What if we tried this? And usually I'm like, Peter, you're insane. And then we try it. And more often than not, it works. Peter and I have a very playful, loving, adversarial sort of relationship in a mix sometimes, and that we push each other in ways that only benefits the film. And that's always the goal. So yeah, I love that part of working on these projects, because we mixed this only in 5 days. I mean, this is not a long mix, so we're going quickly and stuff, and we're making bold strokes and big changes. And so it's a lot of pressure, but it's also a lot of fun, because when you really get something that you think sounds fantastic and portrays the emotion that you want, and then it's always worth it.
Peter, you have anything to add to that?
I love the mixing process with Tim exactly because of this, because it's so open. The creative process never stops. We just keep on getting ideas. And I think the reason for all of us working together on the team was we're all super creative people that come up with crazy ideas all the time. And it's amazing to feel that you're in a room where you are allowed to share those, and we can try those out. And quite often it works really, really well. I remember things like there's some distortion in some of the scenes where Viktor is, for example, at his workplace, where like these other people working and hammering and stuff, and the distorted noise that we created out of this distortion plugin that I love, that I told Tim about, and he was like, oh, that's really nice. And then we put it together with this other sound that's already there, and then we get these things that are suddenly like, whoa, this is something that doesn't just sound the way that you're used to hearing in films about deaf people. And I feel that that was a very important part of this, to avoid the cliches. And the way that we avoid cliches is to be open for creative ideas all the time.
And really quickly, this all stems from Olivier, who had the courage and the trust in us to let us take it in these wild, crazy directions. And he encouraged that. And that's really important. Most of these projects I've worked with Peter, we've had that luxury of directors who come to Peter for a particular reason, or come to all of us wanting that experience, wanting us to push the boundaries and wanting us to try wild, crazy swings. And that's really important too. For directors who might be listening or whatever, that's how you get the best work, is to basically trust the people you're working with and let them experiment and let them try things.
Give them the time to try things.
And give them the time.
Yeah, our schedule on this project was quite special because, the final mix was super short, but the process before that was very long. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, we started talking with Olivier while he was shooting. Actually, I think even before he started shooting. Then the editorial process was quite long, where like Nicholas did a full pass of the film. He was in Paris, I was in Copenhagen. He sent it to me. I did a full pass on the film. Heikki was doing all his Foley at Skywalker in California. And then the composer, he's one of my favorite modern composers. He did this amazing horror film, which was all kind of synthesizers, very synth-based. So when Olivier told me that he had hired him to do this score, I was thinking, okay, now we're going to get all these crazy synth sounds. And then the first music came in,
We got a
It
cello.
was all cello and like strings. And I was like, whoa, okay. So I started collaborating very closely with him. Rich Reland is his proper name. And Rich and I sent things back and forth. And he started tuning the cellos and the strings to the sound design so that the musical elements also then kind of melded together with the sound in a super interesting way. And then bringing all of those things to Tim in the mix. And even during the mix, Nicolas' assistant, Theo in Paris, he got the mix over and then he sent it through an hearing aid and re-recorded the whole film through an hearing aid.
That's right. I forgot about that.
And then we used some elements of those hearing aid recordings in the film. So, I mean, there was all these ideas that just constantly were coming up.
And Rich was there at the mix, and he was amazing too, because again, in all the best sense, he had no pure attachment to the music in and of itself. It was just another element, and he was constantly, let's just move that here. Let's just recut that. We did a lot of shaping of the music in response to all the other things we were trying to do, and he was very open to taking cues out, or let's take that cue and just move it here and try something. You know, we all let our egos at the door, and none of us are attached to all the elements. We come in with this goal of trying to, create a soundtrack, doing whatever we need to do to make it all work. Didn't even go off and write a couple new little pieces at some point while we were in the mix.
Wow, that's amazing. Heikki, what was your favorite sound that you were able to record through these specialized mics?
That's a really hard question. My favorite sound, actually, it's really simple thing, because it was first time I was working with Malcolm 5. He was working for Foley Mixer, and the very first scene when Nicola is walking from the microwave background 2 rooms, and he mixed as a Foley the perfect perspective. I think there was no reverb. These kind of simple things, they are the best ones. But of course, it was a challenging thing. For example, in the beginning, all these small things, installing hearing device and some moments. I had quite a lot talk with Nicola when he was doing his pass before Peter started his own. And there were some scenes where it was kind of clear that we don't know if it's going to be realistic or is it going to be realistic and stethoscope or contact microphone sound. And so trying to create the sound, create the same kind of a rhythm with other mics so they blend together so that it's basically only one take. It's, I don't know, I enjoy my work.
We enjoy your work.
Yeah, exactly. We all enjoy your work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Peter, a lot of times when we go into Viktor's perspective, one of the sounds that we hear is kind of, at least to my point of view when watching it, or point of hearing, was his kind of internal breathing sounds. How did you get that?
Actually, I came to New York to do the voiceover. That took a lot of work. It was really difficult, but I also really we need to record just Viktor's breathing. So we did a long recording of just him breathing in different ways. But some of that is also Heikki. Like when you had that internalized aspect, I mean, it was hard kind of saying, okay, well, now we need to record Viktor with a stethoscope microphone. And as far as I know, Heikki, isn't it really difficult actually to get real good sound through that?
Yeah, it's...
Yeah, your breathing is actually you should talk about the art of recording with a stethoscope mic.
Yeah, that was one experiment we did already with a couple of projects. Like Ad Astra, there was a moment that I needed to do breathing for 110 mix through the film for Mr. Pete, and there was a Sound of Metal. I needed to do some breathing, and it's kind of difficult because if you're using stethoscope microphone, it's actually pretty hard to find place from your body where you don't hear the heartbeat. And so the stethoscope microphone is somewhere here.
On your neck?
Yeah, and it takes the kind of vibration of your, this kind of frequencies. But then I have also this small microphone which you can put into your mouth. And then, of course, we have just a normal microphone. Depends on the moment, which track we are using or how we are blending those couple of tracks together. It's a little bit tricky, but actually it's pretty amazing. You can do lots of also other things, not just breathing with these kind of setups.
Elaborate on, you put a microphone inside the mouth?
Yeah, it's a really, really small, it's like a low mic, but it's a hydrophone.
A tiny hydrophone that you put down into the back of your mouth?
Yeah, it's under my tongue.
Wow.
I think somebody has tried to swallow. I haven't. But yeah, it's in voice technology something. I don't remember the model. I'm really bad with these microphone models, but it's a really interesting mic. And if you have that kind of microphone, it's also pretty personal.
That's an excellent point. This is a really personal film about a man in the Ukraine, made by a man from Corsica that lives in New York, with the sound team from Copenhagen, Paris, Finland, and California. And you're all talking to me while I'm in Canada. This is the United Nations of sound nerds going on here. Thank you very much for talking to me today. I really enjoyed the movie. Listeners, find a way to see this film and turn it up loud. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Listeners, don't go anywhere. I have a special one-on-one interview with the director of Viktor, Olivier Sarbil, that I was able to do while he was in town for the Toronto International Film Festival. He is an impressive man, and he has a really interesting relationship to audio posts that I think you will want to hear. My talk with Olivier will be right after this. Have you been using Subquake by the Cargo Cult? I've had my mind blown by this plugin. I've been able to get the low end to cut through in my mixes in ways I was never able to achieve before. Over the years, I've used a bunch of different low-frequency generator plugins, but Subquake is an entirely different beast. This is not a music plugin that we all have to adapt for our purposes. Subquake was designed for post-production by people working in film and series to solve the problems that other plugins were never built to handle. Subquake pushes your sub sounds forward, making them feel huge, but it keeps everything in spec with its own built-in filters and limiters, all within this single plugin. It is also repeatable and reliable, meaning your rumble won't change each time you play back the scene. You can even punch in on a rumble tail with no snaps or clicks. Gunshots are suddenly tight and they punch. Explosions shake the room, and rumbles have ridiculously long tails. The Cargo Cult recently released version 1.1 of Subquake, which is a free update for existing users. It has a new UI option featuring a more simplistic interface with recognizable knobs to quickly navigate to what you need to get to. Or you can still dig in deep with the full graphical UI showing you every detail of what is happening. It also comes with a treasure trove of presets, including a new category specifically for post mixers to get you where you want to go in short order. Don't fall into the trap of delivering boring ho-hum sub. Add character and shape to your mixes by having more impact from less signal. Get Subquake and shake the plaster right off the walls. Head to thecargocult.nz to learn more. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today, Olivier. I just finished the screening of Viktor. It's a super powerful story. The titular character, Viktor, is a deaf man trying to find his way in the war in Ukraine. For the sound of the film, you leaned heavily on allowing the audience to hear from Viktor's perspective at certain times. When did you kind of come across that idea? Was it in your head from the beginning, or did it come through in the editing process?
Thank you very much for having me here today. But let me give you maybe a bit of backstory.
Great.
In 2011, while I was covering the war in Libya, I was hit by a RPG. I spent maybe 9 months in the hospital. I lost part of my hearing. And over the years, I think it really reshaped the way I understand the world and, of course, my perception of the sound. It is very that perspective that driven me to explore the story of a deaf man in Ukraine in times of war. I say really that as a filmmaker that lost part of his hearing on a battlefield, going back to war to tell the story of Viktor, become deeply personal journey for me, really. I think it mirrors my own struggle, and the single-side deafness is not something that I was talking to people. I hide it for many, many years in fear of losing work as a DP. Well, I want to aim with my single-side deafness, so, there is hope. And yes, I think Viktor, such a brave man, to choose to tell the story, to expose his vulnerability to the audience, takes so much courage, and it was a great inspiration for me to be more open to my single-side deafness. But yes, that's the reason why I chose to tell the story about a deaf man.
The treatment of when we're in Viktor's POV,
yeah.
Did that come about during your picture editing process?
So I work with the most amazing team of sound designer, Nicola Baker, Heikki, Kossi, Peter
Albrechtsen?
Exactly, himself. And those guys have been working on Son of Metal. Nicolas extensive experience working with the dev community. So at the early stage of a filmmaking process, I was already in touch with them, and we were trying to find a way to help the audience to dive into the inner life of Viktor. So it's something that didn't come in the edit. It was an ongoing process during the 2 years filmmaking process, from the start to the final mix.
Do you feel comfortable commenting on what they're doing on the sound? Like, do you feel like you have to trust them more than other filmmakers might have to?
Yes, obviously I have to trust my team. Peter will tell you that I have an amazing hearing for some reason. He was amazed by the way I'm still just with one ear able to find sound that, yes, but obviously I needed to trust my team. I respect so much those guys and their work. They're highly skilled and experienced. The sonic impression of the film was like vital for the film, right? So I really trust the team to help me diving with the sound.
You mentioned that Peter was impressed with your hearing. I reached out to him and told him I was going to be talking to you. And one of the quotes that he gave me when we were talking was that the world would be a much better place if people with 2 ears listened as much as you do with 1 ear.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you, Peter.
So do you find that, like, since you had this, I'm assuming, quite traumatic event of being hit by an RPG, how has that changed your perspective with your hearing?
When I was wounded, I didn't even realize that I lost my hearing. I mean, I've been so badly wounded. I mean, I lost part of my hand, right hand, and I could not walk. I could not use my arm. Half of my face was paralyzed. So hearing was not really my priority. And when I came out of the hospital, I love listening to music. I used to be a musician, and I was, using headphone. And I remember that one time I think I was listening, Radiohead, and they use a split track.
Okay.
So when I put the headphone, I could hear only the bass or the singing, and sometimes I was shifting, and something is wrong. I don't think I hear very well and I realized that, I lost. So it was very organic, almost naturally. I don't even remember the doctor in the hospital telling me, Olivier, you lost hearing. So I think it was very difficult because it really creates, I want to say, like isolation world. I become less social, going out less. It's very hard for me if I'm in a small place going to a party, a lot of people are talking. I won't be able to follow the conversation properly, and I find it extremely challenging and mentally exhausting trying to follow conversation. And so, I start not to going out as much. I have also a sound in my ear. How do you call it? I don't remember. Tinnitus?
Tinnitus.
Tinnitus, yeah. So I have a very annoying white noise playing in my head 24 hours a day. And again, it didn't come immediately. I was watching TV and I start to hear that white noise and I start to, maybe it's the TV. So I play with the volume. No, it's not the TV. Then opening the window, the fridge, everything's. So I don't know where that sound is coming from. And then I realized, oh my God, it's coming from my head. And it was the most annoying thing ever. It took me weeks really to live with it. But finally, the brain is amazing and you forget about it. Only can hear it now because I mentioned it to you.
Yes, exactly.
For me, I used to be a musician. I think that's one of the things the most difficult for me. I used to play piano. So unfortunately, I lost also. Maybe I was not that good. I was probably not good enough. And the universe said, okay, not only we remove one ear, but remove one finger. So definitely, I'm not playing much music anymore. I try with the left hand, but I was never good with it.
As you mentioned earlier, that before directing, you were a director of photography and a stills photographer as well. In those situations, it's not your job to care about sound.
Yeah, you're right. Definitely not for still photography. Then I moved to start my career as a camera operator for news. And the camera operator for news have to be multi-skilled. So he has to film and he has to do the sound and he has to edit. And then I moved to director of photography and then to director/director of photography. Yes, sometimes you wish you had a sound guy with you with a boom, and it's a dream of all DP, especially in documentary, when we have one soundman that can be in charge of the sound. Believe me, it's the dream. But when you work in some environment like war, it's a risk that I can take for myself. But, going into the space, you need to have that special skill. Really, you need to be highly experienced. And with a story like Viktor, I want it to be so intimate, that to reach that intimacy, having a guy with a boom mic around in a tiny house. I mean, his mother already hated me for being there every day. But I don't think she would have taken someone else. But yes, of course, everyone wants to have a sound guy. And sometimes I regret that I didn't have a soundman with you even for a short period of time. But again, I mean, the situation was so difficult. But I was, those days, the mic are pretty good. Sorry for the sound guys, but yeah, we can have a top mic that actually do a fair job. Surprisingly, we got a lot of very good quality natural sound. What they did to experience the sound from the inner life of Viktor, like to feel, to understand
his perspective.
Yeah, his perspective, but also like to understand really how the sound coming from his body, this whole body, internal. So they re-record the natural sound that I got through a hearing head device and also stethoscope. That was amazing. Really works very well. That's why you have that little scratchy sound, metallic sound. This is like coming from the hearing head device that Viktor has. So
it's a really interesting sound. There's a couple points in the movie when they're on the helicopter, when it cuts to that it's it's definitely not a pleasing sound, but it's a super interesting sound.
It is, yeah. And I don't think it has been used before. The whole approach of the sound was very organic. The way we design to recreate the sound of the deaf, the world of the deaf, was the approach was very, very organic. The idea was really to dive the audience into Viktor world and to experience the story and the sound from within Viktor's perspective.
Well, it worked really, really well. This film was mixed at Skywalker Ranch.
It was mixed at Skywalker Ranch,
so
correct.
When people think of Skywalker Ranch, they're thinking Star Wars, Captain America, Iron Man. They're not necessarily thinking your film. Do you want to talk about how you ended up there and what your experience was like there?
I have to say it was the most amazing sound experience I ever had. And it is just the most amazing place. It's just like every sound people, every filmmaker should have at least have an experience in Skywalker. Being in that very inspiring space, the ranch, the vineyard. I mean, it's just very inspiring place. Yes, they do documentary. Of course, they're doing the big blockbuster, Lord of the Rings, Avatar, but they also do documentary. It's interesting because for the sound team, for the mixer, it's something different. It's a totally different approach. And I think they really enjoy it, actually. Mm-hmm. I think it's almost, is it the word a bit more artisanal, maybe?
Yeah.
And I think they were very excited and they were really engaged. It was not like a big crew inside a mix room. It was just me, and we had the composer and Heikki Kossi, also the amazing, extraordinary Foley artist. Peter was there, and Tim
Nielsen.
Yes, correct. Amazing guy also. So I think they do doc among the big player.
I'm going to screw up the quote, but in the film, Viktor says that silence isn't about absence. It's about being present with yourself. Mm-hmm. I felt like when I heard that was kind of, it represented a lot of the film, because there's a lot of space in this film where the audience is left, not necessarily in silence, but there's not always something leading us around. We're left to think about what we're seeing. Mm-hmm. And then when he said that, I was just like, oh, that's a great kind of encapsulation of this film.
He's an amazing poet. He's a great writer. So he wrote the narration.
Oh, okay.
I didn't want to use traditional interview. So I asked Viktor to write his thought, his feeling and emotion on a journal. So I will say every other day, Viktor, can you write about darkness? Can you write about your cat? Can you write about your mom? Can you write about, movie or Miyamoto? And we end up having maybe 50 pages of Viktor's journal that we broke down to 1-2 page. And then I really believe we've got a greater sense of intimacy and self-reflection from Viktor that if we have used a traditional interview, we record it, so he read it, we record and it becomes the voiceover of the film, but the text is from Viktor.
His narration is really something. Like the way he's speaking is very guttural, and it's haunting almost.
I can tell you so the voice that you hear is actually the whispering when he's using sign language.
Oh, okay, that makes sense then.
And there is a couple of moments in the film you can actually hear that sound at the early stage when he's talking on the phone to a deaf friend before to do the delivery food, and you can hear the whispering voice. And we use that voice because when you read back his narration, it was more comfortable to read it back using sign language. And we realized that that voice had something deeper. And it's also a letter to his father. So, it was nice to have something that he was not loud, something a bit more whispering. So we put a mic very close to his mouth. And that's actually the sound that you can hear. That's where the voice is coming from.
See, this is one of those things that movies are so great for, that I didn't know that, but like subconsciously I kind of felt that. So like right when you said it, I was like, of course, like that like you feel that when you're watching the movie, even though you don't know it. That's really cool. Excellent. Thank you very much for talking to me today. This was a really fun interview. I'm glad that we got to talk.
Thank you so much.
Listeners in Europe, I will be at the Sonic Days conference later this month, where there will be a Tonebenders Denmark sound design meetup on Tuesday, November 18th. Come on out if you can. Go to sonicdays.com to learn more. This Black Friday, Sound Ideas is offering its biggest savings of the year. Enjoy 50% off all proprietary sound libraries and memberships. Sound Ideas' best deal yet on world-class audio collections. But that's just the beginning. Each week, Sound Ideas will spotlight one of their most popular libraries with an exclusive limited-time discount. Visit sound-ideas.com regularly to discover which library is featured and grab these weekly specials before they're gone. Tonebenders is produced by me, Timothy Muirhead. Theme music is by Jim Guthrie. You can reach me via email through info@tonebenderspodcast.com. Follow Tonebenders on Instagram to stay on top of new episodes. If you like the show, you can help us out by spreading the word to your friends and colleagues, or leave us a tip. Just go to tonebenderspodcast.com and click support.